for as long as I can remember life was predictable, structured like the lines of an old blueprint. I had built a home, a family and a future piece by piece, never once doubting the foundation beneath my feet. I was the kind of man who believed that if you worked hard, loved deeply and remained loyal, life would reward you in kind, but I was wrong. The early years of my marriage were filled with warmth and laughter. Kayla and I started with nothing but dreams and a small apartment that barely fit our second-hand furniture. We scrimped, saved and built a life from the ground up. I worked long hours while she managed the household, and together we found our rhythm. Our children Carly and Josh were the greatest symbols of our love, our living, breathing legacy, and for years I believed we were solid, unshakable, until the night everything crumbled. Looking back, the warning signs were there, small cracks in the foundation I had been too blind to see. Kayla grew distant, preoccupied, like a woman carrying a secret too heavy to bear. I convinced myself it was stress, a phase that would pass, but the truth was far simpler and far crueler. She had already decided our marriage was a cage, and she was ready to break free. And then came the night that shattered everything. Really, Dad, Mom was right. You're a total idiot. That was the last thing my daughter said before I ended the call. In the days that followed, her messages kept coming. I ignored everyone, texts, voicemails, all of it erased. Every word she sent echoed with her mother's voice, dripping with the same accusations, the same bitterness. It was like she had been trained to parrot Kayla's version of events. 10 years of silence, and now she expected to waltz back into my life. It wasn't an olive branch, it was a reminder that she had chosen her side long ago. I'm Tom Williams, the first. Used to be married to Kayla Williams, 17 years together. Then it all crumbled, and as expected, I was the villain of the story. That's how it works. The man gets cast as the bad guy, the ex-wife takes the kids, and suddenly she's the hero of her own version of events. Divorce court, a system designed to strip men of everything. We had 2 kids, Carly 16 and Josh 14. When my world collapsed, I thought we had a good life. I loved my wife and I thought she loved me. Carly was my shadow, always by my side, helping in the garage, sharing my passion for cars. Josh, he was a bookworm, more into history and politics, always gravitating toward his mom. A few weeks before it all came crashing down, Kayla started acting distant, distracted, lost in thought. I figured it was stress. Then came Friday night. I got home at 600. The house was eerily silent. No dinner on the stove, no Carly coming to greet me upstairs. Something caught my eye. Kayla's dress, lingerie, stockings and heels laid out on the bed. I frowned. Had I forgotten a date night? She stood in front of the mirror applying lipstick. Where are we going? I asked, loosening my tie. She didn't look at me. We're not. I am. A sinking feeling gripped my stomach. What do you mean? I have a date tonight. The kids are with friends and I won't be home until morning. I laughed, waiting for the punchline. A date? She turned to me, expression unreadable. Yeah, I need a night for myself. My blood ran cold. You're joking. Her voice was calm, like she was discussing the weather. 17 years, Tom. I just need one night to feel desirable again. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If you love me, you let me have this, she continued. It won't change anything. My jaw tightened. If you loved me, you wouldn't even ask. She sighed as if I was the unreasonable one. I do love you, but I need this. I'm getting older and I want to feel attractive, especially to younger men. My stomach turned. Younger man? She nodded, almost proud. Clarence is 10 years younger. Hugh's been flirting with me for months and I finally decided, why not? A bitter laugh escaped me. So you're throwing away our marriage for an ego trip? It's just as ex, she said with a shrug. No emotions, no attachments, just one night. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process. And you expect me to be okay with this? She rolled her eyes. You're blowing this out of proportion. After tonight everything will go back to normal. No, if you leave we're done. She smirked. You won't divorce me, and if you try I'll make sure you regret it. The house, the kids, the money, I'll take it all. I'll make sure they see you as the bad guy. I barely recognize the woman standing in front of me. This is what love looks like to you? Of course, she said with a smirk, but if you walk away I'll make your life miserable. I scoffed. You cheat and I'm the villain. She grinned. It's just one night. Who knows, maybe I'll learn a few things that could even help our marriage. My fists clenched. Call it off and maybe we can fix this, otherwise there's nothing left to save. She waved dismissively. We'll talk about counseling tomorrow. Then just like that she turned back to the mirror, adjusting her lipstick. Disgusted, I grabbed my things and walked out of the room. Later she came downstairs fully dressed, clutch in hand, checking herself In the hallway mirror one last time I sat silently in the living room watching a car honked outside. She smiled. Here, I'll see you in the morning. She leaned in to kiss me goodbye. I turned my head. She huffed, irritated. Fine, have it your way, you'll calm down. My voice was cold. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. She laughed softly. Relax, relax, I'll be back and everything will be fine. Then she stepped outside. I sat there staring at the door, and then I broke. I cried for my marriage, for the woman I thought I knew. 20 years together, gone, no fights, no warning signs. She had never voiced dissatisfaction. If she had wanted more, all she had to do was ask. But now she had made her choice. Half an hour later I got up and started moving my things. Maybe some part of me still hoped she'd change her mind, come back. She didn't. Upstairs I packed up our bedroom. The guest room was mine now. I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what was coming. This was a no-fuss state. That meant the law was on her side. She'd get the house, the kids, the money. I'd be left with bills in a broken home. She'd walk away with everything and I'd be the one left paying the price. After settling into my new room I logged into our online banking. Years ago I'd set up a separate account to buy Kayla gifts without ruining the surprise. She knew it existed but had no access to it. Well, I was putting it to use. First I moved half of our joint savings into my account. Then I paid off the credit cards, canceled them, and got new ones in just my name. By Monday my paycheck would be redirected to my account and I'd be splitting the investments with our broker. With everything in motion I poured a glass of Jim Beam and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. The bed felt cold and empty. My mind raced. Could I have stopped her? Was it even worth trying to prevent it? Would I be willing to face the fallout? I gave up on sleep, got dressed, made breakfast, and waited. At 9 a.m. Kayla walked in chirping like nothing was wrong. Good morning, sweetheart, I'm back just like I promised. I didn't respond during the night. My anger turned into something sharper. Clarity. She'd made her choice. I didn't deserve this and I couldn't have stopped it. If I had stopped her the night before, she would have just done it again later. They say you can't stop loving someone overnight. Maybe they're right, but love can turn into something else, and indifference. That's the end of a relationship. By morning I didn't love Kayla anymore. I didn't even hate her. I just didn't care. She found me in my office a few minutes later. There you are, she said, arms open. I'm back, so everything can go back to normal. I pushed her away. Don't touch me. God knows where your lips have been. Her eyes widened and I kept going. You need to get tested for STDs. I want a notarized report before you come in anywhere near me. She was stunned, but irritation crept in. I see you're still sulking, she said. I'm going upstairs to nap. I had a long night. Hopefully you'll calm down and we can talk like adults, and you owe me an apology for your attitude. She left, but I waited for her to realize what I'd done. It didn't take long. Seconds later I heard her yell from upstairs, what the hell did you do? Where are your clothes? What's going on? She stormed back into my office. What's your problem? I asked, feigning confused fusion. All my things are where they belong, she snapped. See, I said, leaning back in my chair. You think the bedroom is still mine too? Her face twisted. My stuff is in my bedroom, I clarified. You moved out? She gasped. Yes, I told you I wouldn't tolerate this. I moved out of our bedroom and soon I'll be moving out completely. Her jaw tightened. We'll talk about this later. I'll give you a week to get over your tantrum, then I'll put everything back in place. I laughed. Not until I see that test result, she huffed and stormed out. I spent the day researching divorce laws, not expecting any surprises but wanting to know just how much trouble I was in. I scheduled apartment viewings and printed financial records for my lawyer. When the kids came home I wondered how long it would take for them to notice something was wrong. Carly popped her head into my office. Daddy, dinner's ready, thanks, sweetie, I said, barely looking up. Kayla had gone all out, cooking my favorite meal and wearing makeup like it was some kind of peace offering. She thought being sweet would break me. She handed me a glass of wine as I walked into the dining room. I poured this for you. She leaned in to kiss me. I turned my face away. She hesitated, but I didn't care. I walked to the sink, poured the wine out, and grabbed a glass of Jim Beam. The kids noticed, but I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of acknowledging it. I didn't touch my food. I passed the dishes around, barely interacting. Josh finally asked, Dad, aren't you going to eat? No, not hungry, I replied. After dinner I refilled my drink and went back to my office. I didn't help with cleanup. A while later I grabbed my truck keys and went out. Dinner alone, a drink at a bar. When I got home it was late. Kayla's light was still on. I slammed my door, locked it, and wedged a chair under the knob. She knocked a few times asking me to open up. I stayed silent, then heard her give up. The next morning I got up early. Soccer games were on and I had a day of not caring ahead. Carly walked in looking groggy. Morning sweetie, want an omelet? Sure dad, thanks. A few minutes later Josh joined us. I'll make yours next, I said, flipping the eggs. Kayla came and grabbed a cup and stared at the empty coffee pot. You couldn't save me a cup? You know how to make coffee, I said, not looking at her. She scoffed. Never mind. She glanced at the stove. So you made scrambled eggs? They're all yours, I said, handing Josh's plate. She glared at me but I didn't care. After breakfast I walked out of the kitchen without saying another word. By noon I was on the couch watching the game. Kayla came in with lunch and a beer, placing them in front of me. I brought you lunch so you don't miss the game, she said, smiling. Without a word I kicked the plate and beer off the table, sending them crashing to the floor. She gasped. I got up and grabbed a new beer from the fridge. I wasn't drinking the one she brought. It didn't matter, and no, I didn't clean up. She brought it in so she could clean it up. I wasn't sticking around much longer. We need to talk, she said after a pause. Shut up, game's on, I muttered. For God's sake, Tom, the kids noticed. She pressed. Good, they'll notice when I leave. She crossed her arms. You're not moving out. There's not going to be a divorce. I ignored her. Later Carly and Josh sat down across from me. Carly was the first to speak. Dad, what's going on with you and Mom? I took a deep breath. Your mom and I are getting a divorce. This isn't about you. We both love you, but this is between us. Josh frowned. Why? Because your mom did something I can't forgive, I said, my voice firm. She knew exactly how I felt and she did it anyway. And she doesn't regret it. Carly's expression tightened. You mean her date Friday night? I turned to her, stunned. You knew? Yeah, she admitted. Mom told us you weren't happy about it, so you know she cheated? I asked, my stomach twisting. Josh shook his head. No, she didn't, he insisted. She told you first. It was sneaky, just one night. Yes, Dad, Carly added. She said if you really loved her you'd move on. I stared at them, speechless. They were siding with her. Really? I asked, my voice colder now. If she loved me, why would she want to sleep with someone else? Carly sighed. Come on, Dad, it was just once. She promised it won't happen again. Let us talk about promises, I said, leaning forward. 17 years ago she promised to be mine, no exceptions. If she can break that vow so easily, why should I trust her now? Josh met my gaze, his jaw tight. But you promised to stay through good and bad, he countered. True, I acknowledged, but when she broke her vow she broke the contract that releases me from mine. Carly exhaled sharply, frustrated. We just don't get why you're ending the marriage over one night. I shook my head, feeling the weight of their judgment. Why am I being blamed for this? Why am I the one ruining the family? She made her choice, and I made mine. They didn't want to hear it. Kayla had already filled their heads with her version of things. To them she did what she needed, and I was the one overreacting. One night out of 20 years. What was one night out of 7,35? When they realized I wasn't changing my mind they left. I finished the game in peace. Dinner was her next attempt at manipulation. Kayla cooked my favorite meal, acting like the perfect wife. Josh walked into the room. Dad, dinner's ready, he said. I grabbed my truck keys without looking at him. From behind me Carly's voice cut in. Where are you going? Dinner's on the table. Sports bar, I said, heading for the door. I'll eat there, but Mom made I'll be back after the game, I interrupted, shutting down the conversation. I had a great burger and fries at the bar. The beer was perfect, one per quarter, enough time to sober up. The place was just 5 minutes away when I got back. Everyone was asleep. The mess from earlier was gone. That made me smile. Monday morning I was up early. First stop, my broker. I opened a new account and transferred half of our investments. Next, HR. I removed Kayla from my retirement plan and named Carrie and Josh as my beneficiaries. I also redirected my paycheck to my personal account. Finally, I told my boss I'd need some time off for legal matters. He was understanding. My lawyer confirmed what I already knew. Getting custody was unlikely at their age. The court would probably consider their wishes based on our conversation. I wasn't counting on them choosing me. I had him start the paperwork. After work I went to the bar to watch Monday Night Football. 3 tacos for $1. Had 3 in the first half, 3 in the second. I ignored Kayla's calls. Carly texted. I replied. It wasn't a pleasant exchange. When I got home they were waiting, giving me judgmental looks. I ignored them, walked to my office and shut the door. Tuesday morning I was up early again, took the day off to find an apartment. I signed a lease on a nice 2-bedroom, paid the deposit and scheduled my move for Saturday. I bought a couch and some furniture from a thrift store with delivery set for the afternoon. I'd take my bed and office set up with me. By the end of the week I'd be gone. When I got home they were already eating. I grinned when I saw they hadn't set a plate for me. I wasn't planning to eat with them anyway. I made a big sandwich, grabbed some chips and took it to my office with a beer. Carly stormed in. Geez Dad, why are you being such an a-hole? I stayed calm. Your mom cheated. She disrespected me, then rubbed it in my face. I made it clear what would happen if she did and she went ahead with it anyway. You're really ruining the family over this, she shot back. It was just sex, no big deal. Someday you'll get married. Imagine if your husband told you he was spending the night with a younger, prettier woman. She shifted uncomfortably. I wouldn't like it, but if he promised to come back I'd try to move on. If he told me first it wouldn't feel like cheating. I stared at her. When you get married, look your fiancé in the eyes when you say your vows, and if you ever decide to have just one night with someone else, picture the look on his face when he finds out. I turned back to my work. When I came home Wednesday both sets of parents were there. I'd always gotten along with Kayla's parents. Her dad Charles shared my love for tech, even if his obsession with Fords was questionable. My parents were loving and supportive, but they never pushed their opinions on me. Seeing them all in my living room was unexpected. Her parents, sure, they'd side with her, but mine. Then it hit me. Tom, Charles said, trying to stay calm. May and I are disappointed in what Kayla did, but we think you're overreacting. I crossed my arms. Yes, she slept with another man. And yes, it was disrespectful, he continued, but it was one mistake in 20 years. You've got two great kids. Don't throw it all away over this. I kept my voice even. It wasn't a mistake, it was planned. She and her lover set it up at least a week ahead. She blindsided me before leaving, no warning. It was deliberate. My mom spoke softly. She didn't cheat, Tom. She told you first. I blinked. Excuse me. She was honest about it, so it wasn't cheating. I scoffed. She didn't ask, she just told me. I made it clear what would happen if she went through with it, and she did anyway. My dad tried to reason with me. We understand you're upset, but think about the bigger picture. Kayla loves you. She promised it won't happen again. With counseling you can get past this. Don't let your pride cost you your family. I stood there stunned. Even my parents were on her side, expecting me to forgive and forget. I couldn't take it. Without another word I walked to my room and slammed the door in Kayla's face. When she tried to follow 10 minutes later, I grabbed my truck keys, walked past them and headed to the sports bar for dinner and some beers. When I returned 4 hours later, the house was quiet and dark. Thursday and Friday passed in the same way. I ignored Kayla completely. The kids were still angry. Surprisingly, Kayla hadn't noticed the credit cards were maxed out yet, but that would change once she tried to go shopping on Saturday. Friday night I was in my office when Kayla walked in, draped in a sheer nightgown, stockings and heels. She leaned against the door frame, her voice low and sultry. The kids are gone, she purred. Come to bed, let us stop this nonsense. I want you to make love to me all night. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. No thanks, I said flatly, and I haven't seen the clinic report proving you're clean. She rolled her eyes. Stop being ridiculous. I need you. Your tantrums aren't solving anything. Not interested, I replied, my voice cool. Kayla scoffed, crossing her arms. If you keep rejecting me I might have to call Clarence again. I shrugged. Do what you want, I said. If you bring him here let me know so I can leave. Her face flushed with anger. She spun on her heel and stormed out. A half hour later I heard the front door slam, followed by tires screeching as she sped away. Finally the house was empty. I didn't waste time. I packed up my things, took apart my bed and loaded up my truck. I decided to sleep on the office couch and poured myself a glass of Jim Beam to unwind. Early the next morning I picked up the keys to my new apartment. Moving took a few hours, but I managed to get everything inside. A couple of neighbors even helped. When I returned to the house no one was home. I used the opportunity to pack up my desk, office furniture and electronics. The neighbor's son helped me load everything before leaving. I grabbed my chair from the living room. No one had noticed it was gone. That evening my phone rang. Carly's name flashed on the screen. Daddy, where are you? She asked, her voice tight with worry. I'm home, honey, I said gently. No you're not, she shot back. Your office is empty. The bed and dresser are gone. The chair isn't in the living room. I looked everywhere and you're not here. Your truck's gone. Where are you? I sighed. You're right, I'm not there. I moved into an apartment. She hesitated. No you didn't. I don't live there anymore, Carly, I said firmly. Maybe after the divorce I'll buy another house, but this place is mine for now. A sharp breath came through the line. Geez, Dad, I can't believe you're being so stupid. I thought you loved us. I do love you, sweetheart, I assured her. I always have and I always will, just not enough to stay, she muttered. I'm not abandoning you, I said, my voice steady. You can see me whenever you want. You left us, she snapped. You're destroying the family. Your mother did that, I said, my patience thinning. I warned her what would happen if she went through with it. She did it anyway. Carly's voice wavered. She thought you loved her enough to get over it, and I thought she loved me enough not to do it, I replied. Whatever. She hung up. The divorce was a nightmare. Kayla fought me at every turn, dragging things out. She insisted on counseling, which the judge ordered, but I refused to participate. I sat through all 12 sessions in silence until the counselor gave up. She fought over everything. A garage poster she'd always hated, suddenly it was essential. Bud Light sign she never wanted, now it had to go in her office. It was all petty nonsense. She made sure I saw the kids as little as possible. When the divorce was finalized, I was stuck paying half the mortgage while she kept the house. Child support was set at $2,000 a month. I got Wednesday nights and weekends with the kids. The worst part, spousal maintenance, $11,000 a month for 5 years unless she remarried. That was fast. Clarence moved in before the divorce was even finalized. Half my paycheck went to her. I cashed out some investments and bought a small fixer-upper. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I spent my nights and weekends working on it. Visitation was a joke. Kayla made sure every weekend was a struggle. Oh, Carly has dance practice, Josh has an important test. When I did get to see them, they were cold, distant, even hostile. No matter how many times I tried to explain, they still blamed me. But when their mother controlled almost all their time, it was a losing battle. One day they told me flat out they didn't want to see me anymore. I could have forced it, but what would be the point? Dragging them over would only make things worse. I still sent gifts and cards on birthdays and Christmas, but they always came back unopened. The only thing that never came back, the checks. They cashed those without a word. When graduation came, I figured they'd finished high school, but I had no idea for sure. I sent a letter about their college funds. No reply. Kayla had kept her promise. She turned them against me. I buried myself in work and home improvements, living quietly. It saved me money, though it felt like I was just existing. Then I made one call that only made things worse. I took a deep breath and dialed. Hey Mom. Her voice was bright and chipper. How are you, sweetheart? I'm good, I said, though it wasn't entirely true. Are you hosting Thanksgiving again this year? A pause. Too long, Mom, I prompted. She exhaled, her tone suddenly hesitant. Well, Kayla and her parents are coming, and she's bringing her new boyfriend. We thought it might be uncomfortable if you were there. I tightened my grip on the phone. You're ditching your son for my ex and her boyfriend. We want to stay close to the grandkids, she said, as if that justified everything. Then with a sigh she added, this is your fault. You know you should have fought harder for your family. I swallowed hard. So I'm just not welcome. Maybe you can come by on Christmas Eve, she offered, as if that were a consolation. Whatever, I muttered and hung up. I spent Christmas Eve watching Die Hard, ignoring my mom's calls and texts. I wasn't in the holiday mood. Across the room sat the unopened gifts for my kids. 5 years later I got a wedding announcement. Kayla married Clarence the weekend after my last alimony payment. Perfect timing. Josh turned 18, so child support ended. Finally I was free. I celebrated by drinking myself into a stupor. Not proud of it, but after everything I did for them, they threw it all back in my face. Now that I was free of them financially, I decided to move on completely. They clearly didn't want me, so I'd return the favor, except for one thing. I'd been paying half the mortgage on that house for years. Once Josh graduated, my payments stopped, but my name was still on the deed. Kayla seemed to think she owned it outright, but the divorce agreement was clear. She could stay until the kids graduated. After that it was mine too. I called my lawyer. The house had been worth $300,000 when we divorced, with $200,000 in equity. Now it was worth about $500,000 with $450,000 equity. Only $50,000 left on the mortgage. Why go after it? Simple money, plus it would piss Kayla off, and I enjoyed that thought. A week later my phone rang. I answered without checking the caller ID. Tom, what the hell is going on? Kayla snapped. I leaned back unfazed. Oh hey Kayla, long time no talk. What's up? Why did a realtor show up at my house with a sales contract? Because both our names are still on the deed, I said. Evenly you need to sign the papers. Her voice sharpened. I'm not selling. Then send me my share of the equity, I countered. You got the house in the divorce. No, I corrected. I was allowed to live there until Josh graduated. That happened last month. Now either we sell or you buy me out. I'm not paying you for a house I already own. She shot back. Good, I said, my tone cool because I'm not even asking for what it's worth. My share is $225,000. Add in the furniture you insisted on keeping, and we'll call it $250,000. You're insane, she yelled before hanging up. I laughed. It felt good. A couple of months later, after a pointless legal battle, the judge ruled in my favor. She even had to pay my legal fees. The house appraised for more than expected and I walked away with $275,000. Kayla and Clarence bought me out. Most of the money came from Clarence, which caused problems between them. Not my problem with that cash. I finished fixing up my house and built a workshop out back. I bought a beat-up '72 Chevy truck, just needed a new chassis. Over the next year I rebuilt it from the ground up. I went with a 427 big block engine, had it upgraded and added a supercharger. The first time I floored it, the rear tires shredded instantly. I almost lost control but managed to keep it straight. Lesson learned: respect the power. A few weeks later I saw a flyer for a local car show. I signed up at the event. I pulled into a parking spot beside a stunning '68 GTO. The owner, a redhead with a young daughter, stood nearby. No ring, no guy inside. I stepped out of my truck and nodded in her direction. Morning, nice car. She glanced up and smiled. Thanks, your truck's pretty sweet too. First time at a show? I asked as an exhibitor. Yeah, she said. I'm Maria and this is my daughter Jenny. Nice to meet you both. I said, I'm Tom. If you two need some shade, feel free to hang out with me. We spent most of the day chatting. Marie shared how her ex had cheated with his boss's wife. Instead of exposing him, she made a deal. He gave her the GTO to keep quiet. Jenny, full of energy, added, I don't talk to my dad anymore, he's trash. At the end of the show I wasn't ready for it to end. Want to grab dinner? They agreed and we headed to Red Lobster. Over dinner they asked about my past, so I told them everything: how my ex had cheated, how my kids sided with her, how I lost it all. Wait, so she cheated and your kids cut you off? Jenny asked. Yep. By the time I could explain, they were already on her side. Marie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Tom, you didn't deserve that. Her warmth hit me harder than I expected. We laughed and talked for a while longer before we left. We exchanged numbers. Marie agreed to meet up again. As they walked to their car, Jenny turned back, gave me a grin, a wink and 2 thumbs up. The next weekend I asked Marie out again. She eagerly agreed. Dinner and dancing. When I walked her to the door, I kissed her cheek in the window. Jenny grinned and flashed me another double thumbs up. After 2 more dates I invited them over for dinner. I taught myself to cook after my divorce and my lasagna was one of my best dishes. They loved it. They also loved my house, though I overheard Marie whispering it needs a woman's touch. The following weekend Marie invited me over. Her cooking put mine to shame. I ate so much I had to apologize. That's the best compliment a cook can get. She laughed. Mom's amazing, but I'm almost as good, Jenny chimed in. 2 weeks later, another night out, another dance. A slow song played. She pressed against me. We kissed. Deep, slow, electric. A few weeks later she leaned in and whispered, take me home. I hesitated. She giggled, you're home, silly. Good thing I drove my regular truck, not the '72. I might have lost control. That night we made love. In the morning I made her breakfast. Jenny gave me another double thumbs up. Months later I asked. She said yes. A simple courthouse suite. They moved in and Jenny started calling me Dad. Life was good. Sure, there were disagreements. Jenny and I clashed sometimes, teenager versus authority figure, but she respected me and Maria loved me as much as I loved her. A year later my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello. Hi Daddy, came an excited voice. I frowned. Carly. Yes, she said, practically bubbling over. I have great news. I'm getting married. My chest tightened but I forced a smile. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I want you at the wedding, she said. Of course, I said, relieved. Walking you down the aisle would be an honor. There was a pause, then she said, oh no, Clarence is walking me. He's paying for the wedding, and since it'd be awkward with Mom, you won't be in the front, but I still want you there. Silence. My stomach dropped. Clarence, I finally asked, my voice cold. The guy your mother cheated with? Carly sighed. Dad, I'm trying to fix things. If you hadn't left, Mom and Clarence wouldn't have fallen in love. I clenched my jaw. So you still think she did nothing wrong? More silence. I exhaled sharply. Then I won't be there. You handed my last great honor to the man who broke our family, and frankly I doubt your marriage will last. You'll probably cheat just like your mother did. Carly's voice turned ice cold. Fine, don't expect to see your grandkids if you raise them like you were raised. I don't want to. A sharp inhale on the other end of the line. Then through gritted teeth she spat. Really, Dad, Mom was right. You're a total idiot. Click. That was the last thing I ever heard from my daughter. I put my phone down, grabbed my tools and got back to work. The '63 Chevy pickup wasn't going to fix itself. I was so focused I didn't notice Jenny sneak in and grab my phone. I hadn't even realized she was home. I was furious at my dad. I had tried to be civil, inviting him to my wedding, and he had the audacity to speak to me like that. This was his fault. He had torn our family apart. I had hoped he'd finally take responsibility. My phone rang again, another unknown number. With all the wedding planning I'd gotten used to random calls, I answered. Hello. A sharp voice came through the line. Is this Carly Williams? Yes, I said cautiously. Who's this? You can stop calling my dad and being a cast iron witch to him, the voice snapped. I blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me, who the hell are you? I'm Jenny Williams, she said, her tone icy. My mom married your ex-dad and he adopted me. I love him and I'd never treat him the way you do. You're an insult to daughters everywhere. I reeled, trying to process. What are you talking about? Jenny let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I know exactly what happened. Your mom cheated and you defended her. That says everything about you. I opened my mouth, but she steamrolled on. My real dad cheated and my mom threw him out, and if she ever did that to my dad, I'd help him pack her bags. She paused just long enough for her next words to hit even harder. Tom isn't my biological father, but he's the best man I know. In fact, I should thank your hooker of a mother for being so stupid, because if she hadn't thrown him away I wouldn't have him as my dad. I was speechless. Jenny's voice turned even colder. And by the way, tell your grandparents they have another granddaughter. Not that I care if they'd turn their backs on their own son. They're nothing to me. I clenched my fists. You little. Jenny cut me off. One last thing, when you say your vows, look into your husband's eyes and imagine what happens when he cheats on you, because he will, and when that day comes, call me. I'd love to laugh in your face. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, shocked. I had no idea Dad had remarried, let alone had another daughter, and yet something about Jenny reminded me of myself before Mom convinced Josh and me that Dad had abandoned us. At first I had doubted her. I even considered moving in with Dad, but she explained how she had needed that night, how it was just one moment in their long marriage. She had been willing to work things out. He had refused. He had left. He had broken our family, and now some girl who didn't even know me had the nerve to call and throw insults. And why was Dad so mad? Of course, Clarence was walking me down the aisle. He had been there for me these past years. I hadn't spoken to Dad since Josh and I confronted him about abandoning us. Besides, Clarence was paying nearly $20,000 for my wedding. I doubted Dad had set aside anything close to that. Half an hour later, Mom and both grandmothers walked in from shopping. Mom immediately noticed my mood. Honey, what's wrong? I sighed. I invited Dad to the wedding. I thought maybe we could reconnect. Grandma Williams lit up. Oh, that's wonderful. Is he coming? I shook my head. No, he got mad when I told him Clarence was walking me down the aisle and that it would be awkward for him to sit up front. Mom scoffed. I thought he would have gotten over his pig-headedness by now. I sighed. And if that wasn't bad enough, I continued, I found out I have a half-sister. 3 gasps echoed at once. What? Mom, Grandma and Grandpa all said in unison. Yeah, I said, crossing my arms. Some girl named Jenny Williams called me right after Dad hung up. Apparently he married her mom and adopted her. I let out a dry laugh. She wasn't exactly friendly. The nicest thing she said was that she should thank Mom for being stupid enough to let such a great man go. Their stunned silence filled the room as I recounted both phone calls. Grandma Williams finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom got married and didn't even tell us. Grandpa shook his head in disbelief. Mom, still reeling, muttered, I have another granddaughter. The wedding day arrived. As I got ready, Dad's words lingered in my mind. For a moment I felt sad he wasn't here, but I had reached out. He had rejected me. Clarence smiled as he took my hand, walking me down the aisle. My heart swelled. I was surrounded by family. Josh stood proudly as one of Bobby's groomsmen. Everyone was here for me. Tears welled in my eyes. Mom watched with pride, tears slipping down her cheeks. At the altar, Clarence lifted my veil, kissed my cheek and whispered, "Congratulations, baby girl." Then the priest spoke, "Who gives this bride away?" Clarence answered, "Her mother," and something felt wrong. I pushed the thought aside. The priest continued, "I looked into Bobby's eyes and began my vows to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, forsaking all others." I froze as I looked into Bobby's eyes. My vision blurred. Suddenly I saw him with another woman. Then just as quickly the image shifted. I saw myself standing before my father, telling him I had slept with someone else. A murmur swept through the guests. Bobby's brow furrowed. "Harley, wait, I hadn't even realized I was carrying." Lifted, I smiled. "I finally get it," I whispered. Bobby blinked, confused. That's great, but what do you get?" "Everything." I took a steady breath and looked him in the eyes. "Bobby, do you love me?" His frown deepened. "Of course, why would you even ask?" I exhaled slowly. "Because I can't marry you today." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Bobby's face paled. "You're not leaving me at the altar, are you?" I squeezed his hands. "No way, we are getting married, just not today." Shocked whispers filled the church. I ignored them for the first time. "I didn't care." "This is wrong," I said, "and I need to make it right. I'm only getting married once for life, so I need to fix things first." Bobby was confused. "Carly, what's wrong?" I looked into his eyes. "I love you with everything I have and I will marry you, but we need to go now and make things right. We'll reschedule the wedding and we'll do it right." I turned to the guests, my voice steady. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this today. We're not canceling, just postponing. We'll let you know the new date, but hey, the reception hall is paid for, the bar is open, and the part's already set up, so eat, drink and enjoy." Scattered murmurs and whispers rippled through the crowd, but a few chuckles emerged as I shifted my gaze to Clarence. I smirked. "And don't worry, you're still paying the bill." Laughter spread through the guests. Without another word I grabbed Bobby's hand and turned to walk back down the aisle. Before we could leave, Mom and Clarence stepped in front of us, blocking our path. Mom's eyes were blazing. "What are you doing?" she demanded. I met her glare, unwavering. "Fixing a mistake." Her brows furrowed. "What mistake?" My jaw tightened. "The biggest one I ever made." Confusion flickered across her face. I didn't hold back. "The mistake of believing your nonsense. The mistake of blaming Dad instead of helping him kick your cheating aide to the curb." Her lips parted in shock. "Carly, I'm your mother," I scoffed. "Yeah, well, you're also a hooker, and once a cheater always a cheater." Her face turned crimson. "How dare you!" I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. How dare I?" My voice dripped with contempt. "I regret ever being anything like you." It wasn't until I looked into Bobby's eyes that I finally saw you for what you are: a liar and a cheat. And you know what? Once a cheater always a cheater. A realization hit me like a freight train. If Bobby ever betrayed me, it would destroy me, and if I ever did that to him, I'd be no better than her. All this time I had been blind. Dad had been the real example. She had been the mistake. Mom's expression twisted with anger. What are you talking about?" But I saw it, the flicker of fear in her eyes. I tilted my head, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Come on, Mom, do you really think I don't know about your training sessions with Jim Davis?" Clarence stiffened beside her. I smirked. "Funny how all your workouts happen at his apartment, not the gym." Her face went pale. "How about Carlos, the pool guy? He takes extra time every visit because he's busy screwing you on the Shaw Lounge. Or the landscaping crew, do they get special tips after finishing the yard work?" I smirked. "I've got video proof. Came home early a few times, just in case you feel like denying it." A horrified gasp rippled through the crowd. "And let's not forget Mario, your barber. Every haircut ends with you on your knees in the back room. At least Clarence doesn't have to worry about you cheating on your boss, since he is your boss." Clarence stiffened, his expression shifting from shock to disgust. "Oh, and Alan Morris, our faithful married neighbor, he sneaks over whenever his wife's out for girls' night." Sound familiar? Mom's desperate eyes darted to Clarence, but it was too late. He had heard every word, so had everyone else. Then an idea struck me. I turned to Clarence and with an icy smile said, "Before God and everyone here, I vow to pay you back every dime you spent on this." Sweating with the same sincerity my mother had when she made her vows. Yeah, he shouldn't hold his breath with Mom. Stunned into silence, I grabbed Bobby's hand and led him down the aisle. On the way out, I stopped by the videographer. "Did you get all that?" He grinned. "Oh yeah, every second." He handed me a copy of the footage, already preparing a backup. I quickly signed off for him to post it online. Hopefully it would go viral and bury Mom in the shame she deserved. Bobby and I rushed to the parking lot. His car was already packed for our honeymoon, but our plans had changed. His brother was Supposed to take him home after the reception. Not that there was a reception anymore. I slid into the passenger seat, my heart pounding as he turned the ignition. The 440 engine rumbled to life. Not a GM but his '69 Challenger was still a beast. "Where to?" Bobby asked as we peeled out of the parking lot. "West on 156, I said, pulling up my phone. "I'll put in the address." Finding Dad wasn't hard. I knew the town. A quick real estate search told me exactly where he lived, 2 hours away. I just hoped he was home. We didn't stop to change. I had something to make right, opening the door to find a woman in a wedding dress and a man in a tux on. My porch was surreal. If I were a priest maybe, but I wasn't, and this wasn't a church. Even more shocking, I recognized her, my daughter Carly, the one who had cut me out of her life. I knew today was her wedding day, so why was she here? Shouldn't she be at the reception on her honeymoon? Her voice trembled. "Daddy, can we talk?" Still stunned, I stepped aside, gesturing toward the living room where Maria and Jenny sat just as shocked. "Carly," I said cautiously, "this is my wife, Maria, and our daughter Jenny." Then I turned to the man beside her. "And you are?" "Oh right," Carly interjected, "this is my fiancé, Bobby Jensen." "Fiancé?" I frowned. "I thought you just got married." She hesitated. "I couldn't go through with it, not without you walking me down the aisle." Tears welled in her eyes. "Daddy, I finally understand. You were right. I was blind, caught up in Mom's lies, blaming you when she was the one who walked away. I was young and stupid, but I see it now. And I need you in my life. I need you to walk me down the aisle." I stood frozen, trying to process everything, but one question nagged me. "Carly, what happened at the wedding?" She glanced at Bobby, then pulled a disc from her bag. "You should watch this." While Bobby grabbed their suitcase and Maria led Carly to change, I set up their video. When they returned, I hit play. At first it was a normal wedding. Bobby waited at the altar, the bridesmaids walked down, and Clarence led Carly down the aisle. Then as Carly recited her vows, she hesitated, struggled, stopped. "She actually did it," Jenny whispered on screen. Carly's expression shifted. Then in front of a packed church, she called out her mother, exposing her for the serial cheater she was. By the time the video ended, Carrie turned to me, raw emotion in her eyes. I looked at Bobby and realized how much it would hurt if I did to him what Mom did to you. I finally understood what had forsaking all others meant, and I realized how much I had dishonored you, the most honorable man I know, by letting someone else take your place. I want to marry Bobby, but only if you walk me down the aisle." Then she turned to Jenny and smiled. "And I need my little sister as a bridesmaid. Your tough love was the wake-up call I needed." Jenny's eyes widened. Carly nodded. "When I hesitated at the altar, I heard your words, 'How can I get married if you won't stand by my side?' That hit me hard." We talked for hours. I hadn't realized Jenny had taken Carly's number from my phone and called her earlier that day. That night Carly ignored calls from Kayla and Clarence, but picked up when her friends called, laughing as they told her how guests had enjoyed the reception. On Clarence's dime, he had tried to cancel, but it was too late. The food was served, the bar was open, and the DJ was playing. Eventually he sulked in a corner with a drink. Josh even sent Carly a video. Kayla had approached Clarence, but the conversation didn't go well. Cheating hooker was the highlight of his rant. Looked like their marriage was crumbling. Carly and Bobby decided to stay the week, using their planned honeymoon time to reconnect. It gave me a chance to get to know Bobby, a solid guy with strong values. At first things were tense since he had only heard Kayla's version of events, but as the truth surfaced he warmed up. It helped that he was a car guy, even if he preferred Dodges. At least his Challenger had a manual transmission. By midweek Carly set a new wedding date, same venue a year later. This time I was paying for it and I was walking her down the aisle. Marie helped with planning and Jenny was officially a bridesmaid. Carly and Bobby called everyone in the wedding party except Kayla and Clarence. Over the next few months we rebuilt our relationship. Carly and Bobby visited often and we went to car shows together. Marie's GTO, my '72 truck, Bobby's Challenger, and even Jenny's '74 Firebird, which I had bought for her. Even Josh started coming around. He had always been closer to his mother, but we were making progress. I suspected he was trying more for Carly's sake than mine, but I wasn't complaining. Josh also kept me updated on Kayla and Clarence's downfall. Clarence had moved out and filed for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, not infidelity, meaning Kayla dodged the worst of their prenup. He didn't fight, just ended it quickly. The good news for Clarence, he had a prenup. Kayla got the house and $50,000, but Clarence kept Everything else he tried to claim part of the house, but he had no proof he had used the loan to buy out my share, but never documented the transaction. Now he was paying off a loan for a house he didn't even own. By the time he realized he'd never get his money back, it was too late to file an infidelity claim. Meanwhile, Kayla's reputation was ruined. Word of her affairs spread, and suddenly she wasn't welcome at social events. Friends distanced themselves. Worse, she had no income. She had lived off Clarence's money, and now that was gone. Clarence, on the other hand, learned a very expensive lesson between buying my share of the house, dropping 28,000 on a wedding that never happened, and paying Kayla's divorce settlement. He lost a fortune, and then the humiliation. Kayla, furious that Clarence had dared to leave her, started spreading rumors. She told her few remaining friends that Clarence had a tiny problem in the bedroom and that he refused to return the favor. That kind of gossip spreads fast. Clarence's downfall was swift. His social life crumbled as word spread. Women at the bar laughed in his face. Soon he avoided public places altogether, going straight home after work. Meanwhile, I had a more important task at hand. Ready, Daddy? Carly asked. No father is ever truly ready to let his daughter go, but I was on her. The church doors swung open and music filled the air with pride. I led Carly down the aisle, glancing at the guests. Kayla sat in the fourth row, a spectator at her own daughter's wedding. The front row seat she once claimed now belonged to Marie, the woman who had stood by me through it all. After this final duty, I would take my place beside my wife. The priest's voice filled the air. Who gives this woman in marriage? I straightened my shoulders. As her father, I do, I said, firmly. Leaning in, I kissed Carly's cheek and whispered, love you, baby. Then with steady hands I placed hers in Bobby's, and for the record, this wasn't my idea, it was hers. I took my seat beside Marie, watching as Carly faced Bobby, her voice steady as she recited her vows to have and to hold in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. When she reached the final part, she lifted her chin, her voice ringing out with unwavering certainty, leaving everyone else behind. She grinned at Bobby as she finished. It was a beautiful ceremony. When they sealed it with a kiss, the guests erupted in applause. At the reception, I sat at the head table, Marie beside me, watching the room across the hall. Kayla nursed a drink, her scowl deepening every time her gaze landed on Marie in her old seat. Clarence wasn't invited, not that he would have dared show up. My last duty as a father was complete. I had walked my daughter down the aisle, toasted the newlyweds, and shared a father-daughter dance. Now I watched as Jenny twirled around the dance floor, surrounded by eager young men. Then a familiar voice cut through the music. Marie, mind if I borrow your husband for a dance? Kayla. Marie met her gaze for a long moment, then with a small smile she said, just make sure to return him where you found him. She looked at me and added, I trust you. I don't trust her. I led Kayla onto the dance floor. A slow song played, probably one she had requested. I kept my distance for a moment. We danced in silence. Then she spoke. You were supposed to give me that one night, and we were supposed to move on. You shouldn't have left. You should have known I wouldn't stand for you cheating, no matter how many times you did it. But I didn't cheat. I told you beforehand. I sighed. Doesn't change the fact that you slept with someone else. That's cheating. I never wanted this, she whispered. I just needed one night and we could have been together forever. You're the only man I ever loved. Him, he was nothing. Does X wasn't even that good. He was selfish and not as big as you. I arched a brow. Then why did you marry him? Because you divorced me. I didn't love him, but I liked him, and I didn't want to be alone. I thought maybe I could love him, but I never got over you, and yet you cheated on him too, she huffed. Because he was awful in bed. I tried to train him, but he wouldn't listen. No effort, no interest, and my needs wouldn't even go down on me, so I stopped everything. Eventually I found guys who actually knew what they were doing. I shook my head. So you destroyed our marriage for one night? I shook my head. So you destroyed our marriage for one night of mediocres. The ex then wrecked another because your new husband didn't measure up. She lowered her gaze. I never thought Carly would turn on me. I chuckled. That's the problem, Kayla. You never think. She reached for my hand. We had a good marriage. Maybe we could. I pulled back, laughing. Not just no, but hell no. Even if I weren't married, you ruined any chance of reconciliation when you turned our kids against me. Now I have a wife I love, a daughter I adore, and 2 kids who came back into my life. The best I can offer is civility at family events. That's it. The song ended, and so did the conversation. That night was the last time we spoke. Kayla eventually lost the house. She couldn't afford the mortgage She downsized to an apartment and lived off the sale money, stretching it as long as she could. Occasionally she went on dates, but as far as I know she never had another serious relationship. Clarence, same story. Meanwhile, Carly and Bobby built a strong, happy marriage. They had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. Josh married a great woman and they had 2 daughters. As far as I know, neither of them ever cheated on their spouses. Some people say I should have gotten revenge on Kayla and Clarence, but the truth is they destroyed themselves. Any action I took would have only dragged me down with them. Instead I moved forward, because the best revenge a life well lived in karma. Well, she handled the rest. Kayla and Clarence didn't burn, but they sure didn't walk away unscathed, and that's fine because I have a wife who loves me, kids who came back, a home filled with laughter. That's all I ever needed. Ready, Daddy? Jenny asked. No father is ever truly ready to let his little girl go, but I was honored. The church doors opened and music filled the air. I stepped forward, leading my daughter down the aisle, Marie beaming in the front row. As I took my seat beside my wife, I glanced at Carrie. She caught my eye and gave me a knowing smile. Jenny had promised to do it right the first time, and I knew she would.